What up, TCK Potters? Welcome back to the program. I'm your host, Sky Guasco, joined by my man, Bobby Lamarco, finishing up our mini-series on NFL free agency. I've taken the cap of the player mindset. Bob's taken the GM coaching mindset, where we feel these guys have landed. And, of course, a lot of guys have landed by this point. We are breaking down the NFC West, the 49ers, Cardinals, Rams, and Seahawks. If you're just joining us right now and you have not yet subscribed to the Fantasy Focus YouTube channel, please do that. It helps us much. Hit that bell so you don't miss any of alerts. We got a lot of episodes coming all off season long. And of course, we pick it up in overdrive once the season starts after the NFL draft. We're also available on Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter. You can follow our podcast anywhere the Believe Network is heard on podcast networks. That is the Candlestick Kids Fantasy Football Podcast. Bob, Niners, Cardinals, Rams, Seahawks. Let's roll.
So NFC Wishlist, talking about, we're going to go through the Cardinals first. And obviously, Sky, there's a lot of movement on this team. They did bring back a couple guys. They did lose one or two. So let's talk about these running backs, the tight end. Obviously, some receivers might be still on the move. But give us a quick breakdown of who has re-signed, left, and who's still available in free agency for the Arizona Cardinals.
Cardinals brought back James Conner, and they brought back Zach Ertz. Both made perfect sense. Both are good, cheap options, more or less, for these Cardinals. So I like that move a lot for both of them. James Conner last year dominated. It's just a matter of him staying healthy. And Zach Ertz came in halfway through. He was pretty much done in Philadelphia, comes over, fits in really well, hyper-targeted. I like him in PPR leagues more so than standard and half because of the volume, not so much the touchdown upside. Christian Kirk shocks the NFC and gets the Nelson Aguilar of this season, where he's the third highest paid wide receiver in the NFL. He's a slot wide receiver, and he is on probably, I would say, maybe a top 20, 25 offense in the NFL right now with a rookie quarterback that was terrible last season. So we'll see what happens to Christian Kirk on the Jags. I'm not buying that. And then Chase Edmonds ends up on the Dolphins. I like that a lot. Again, Mike McDaniel comes over from the 49ers. They're running that scheme. A lot of running back opportunity there, but what do they do with Myles Gaskin? So the Cardinals do have a lot of movement, Bob. I like these moves. All four of them make sense for NFL, but the Christian Kirk one for fantasy, I'm not buying that hype.
Yeah. Eddie plays the slot. What's going to happen with LaVisca?
No.
I don't know, man. It sounds like LaVisca might be on the move, but they also signed Zay Jones. Jaguars is going to have a lot of mediocrity. It sounds familiar, kind of like the Eagles receiving corps for a couple of years under Doug Peterson. So let's talk about my guy. And now the Arizona Cardinals, most likely, A.J. Green might come back, honestly. They lost Christian Kirk, but they have Rondell Moore to put right in there. And that's awesome news. They're going to get DeAndre Hopkins back. But what I think is A.J. Green actually played pretty well last year. And I think because he's a little bit younger than the guy I'm going to talk about, he might get a decent contract. And I also talked about A.J. Green a little bit earlier. But my guy's Emmanuel Sanders. So Sanders, going to be he's 34 years old. He's about to age out of our analysis. But it's not even about what his necessarily him being an explosive, big-time playmaker for this team. It's more about reliability. Like Kyler Murray, his first few seasons, there was Hopkins and nobody else. Kirk was in and out of the lineup. He didn't have a lot of reliable weapons. They had a lot of young guys like Andy Isabella who never really panned out. But he did flourish when he had nice veteran guys he could lean on. A.J. Green had a resurgent year. And I think Emmanuel Sanders still fits a nice mold. He could play in the deep passing game on the opposite side of a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, who's a bigger physical receiver. You got Rondell Moore in the slot playing yards after the catch. You also have Zach Ertz, who can handle the middle of the field. So I think Emmanuel Sanders would be a nice compliment to this team if they can't bring back A.J. Green. And A.J. Green, I still think, would be a nice little compliment on this team. Let's jump down to the Los Angeles Rams. Now, not a lot of movement here, some movement up front, Sky, but overall, what are your thoughts about the pending free agents and where the guys have gone so far?
Offensive line moves are really the only ones that have really moved. And Bob, you cover offensive line, I would guess, better than anybody in the fantasy football industry. So hats off to you for giving shouts out to the big fellas up front. The two names still to move here, though. Sony Michel, Odell Beckham. Odell Beckham obviously getting hurt in the Super Bowl. We'll see what happens here, but he finally got his ring and showed some resurgence last year with a quarterback. I am worried about him going somewhere and being productive right away. This is his second major injury of his career. We saw him really take a long time to get back to health in Cleveland, often on the field with injuries. I'm concerned about that. It's a cop-out at this point, but with so many wide receivers landing at this point, I mean, Philadelphia makes sense if he doesn't stay with the Rams. Again, same guys, Jets, Lions, Falcons. I mean, all those teams need a big-time, prolific number one wide receiver, and when healthy, Odell is certainly that guy. Sony Michel, man, Bob, you and I have been going kind of toe-to-toe on Sony Michel for 2 seasons here. I'm not a Sony guy. Never have been, never will be. I just don't believe in him as a big-time fantasy asset. I will say, though, last year he did have glimpses, and he did play well when given the opportunity. I think he's a great backup, and with Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson, they don't need him anymore, so I could see him, going on. Like, again, Atlanta needs a running back. Maybe goes to Carolina, backing up Christian McCaffrey, or, maybe even Tennessee or something for to back up Derrick Henry or something. And New Orleans could use some work as well. He can catch the ball a little bit too. So we'll see what happens with Sony Michel. But both these guys, huge question marks. I'm not excited about them yet.
So speaking of that, the Rams, listen, they have everything. They got Stafford, they got the running backs, Darrell Henderson, Cam Akers, so they don't even need Sony to come back if they don't want to. They have Robert Woods coming back, by the way. I might be the only person in the world who doesn't want Odell to come back. I don't want overcrowding. I don't want Odell and Jefferson. I don't want it. I want Odell to go somewhere where he can get his targets. But Robert Woods coming back behind Cooper Kupp, Tyler Higbee's still there. But the offensive line is big. Andrew Whitworth, stalwart, 40-year-old left tackle, is gone, but they re-signed their backup from last year, no boom, so he'll be back. And he was solid when he played. The real problem comes Austin Corbett, who rejuvenated his career with the Rams. Now they need some reliable guys. And that comes to me, I actually like Trey Turner. So this is another guy. Early on in his career was very good. Had a nice bounce back last year with the Steelers. And the thing is, he's a veteran guy who I just feel like these type of teams, the Rams, it's easier to get veterans to come on a cheap contract. So Trey Turner, hey, why don't you come to the Rams, fill a need for us because we just lost Austin Corbett. He's a guy with plenty of experience, and he could probably really fill in here and play pretty well for the Rams. And I think they need to continue to, because they have the weapons, they have the quarterback. Don't let the line fall apart, because we saw just a few years ago, the Rams let the line fall apart. It just resulted in a catastrophe for Jared Goff. So I just don't let it happen again. Invest in the offensive line. Go get yourself some Trey Turner. Let's jump down to your 49ers, guy. Now, listen, we're 7 minutes in. Usually I tell you we got to be quick, but you know what? For the 49ers, just kick back, relax. Tell me a story. Let me hear these free agents. Talk about your boys. Feel free to vent. This is your time now. The floor is yours.
Tell you a story, folks. Many moons ago, the 49ers had 5 healthy running backs. That was 4 seasons ago. Every one of those guys has been injured. Every one of those guys pretty much has either left the team or might be on their way out the door. Now we have Elijah Mitchell, who's our gold this year. But let me get this straight. Since Kyle Shanahan has been on the team, all right, the head coach, there's been a different wide running back one in this system every single season due to injury, due to talent, whatever. So for Elijah Mitchell to come back and be the number one, I'm not banking on it. My boy, Raheem Mostert, is coming off of an injury, right? His doctor said on social media, in 6 years of performing this injury recovery to NFL athletes, none of his clients have recovered the way that Raheem Mostert has. I know, like, coaches speak, I don't get into. Doctors speak, I'm all about. So I love this for Raheem Mostert. He's aging, but he does not have the wear and tear you would expect an aging late 20s running back have, because he just hasn't had the opportunity. So I still like Raheem Mostert to return to the 49ers. He's still cheap, makes perfect sense. They need depth. Elijah Mitchell, they're still going to have Jeff Wilson. They resigned JaMychal Hasty. They still have Trey Sermon that everybody forgot. They're stacked. I think all running backs return for the San Francisco 49ers. And then, again, I mean, what are they going to do with this Jimmy Garoppolo, Trey Lance thing? Like, obviously it makes sense that Trey Lance would be the starter, but all of a sudden nobody wants Jimmy. I'm not shocked, because I don't think he's that good. But he had off-season shoulder surgery just now. He's not going to be 100% healthy probably by opening day. The Colts were in love with him last week. Now they're not so much. Quarterback options are running out. He's not going to go to the Seahawks because of the Seahawks in the Niners division. It's getting messy in San Francisco, man. I don't know what's going on. Running backs return. Wide receivers are good. Defense is getting better. And I think we're going to shore up that offensive line, and hopefully Trey Lance can make it happen.
And you signed Ward, the cornerback, who's been very good when healthy for the Chiefs. So, when it comes to the 49ers, this is strictly me from a fantasy perspective. And I want to see Trey Lance. My pick is just trade Jimmy G. For the love of God, go. Don't play this stupid game trying to figure out, we want to get this crazy value for Jimmy G. For the love of God, trade him. Because listen, I love competent quarterback play. So I don't want to see the Colts trotting out some random guy. Jimmy G provides competent quarterback play. Ask Deebo Samuel owners and George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk in the second half. He could support fantasy assets. So I think Jimmy G or even Trey Lance riding the bench is a crime. I want these guys on the field. I want Trey Lance playing for the 49ers, and I want Jimmy G to go somewhere. The question comes, where should he go? The Saints, is he going to be the bridesmaid to the bride of Deshaun Watson, right? He's not going to go to Seattle. He's out. They're not going to trade him within the division. So it's the Colts. It's the NFC South teams. That's really it that could get Jimmy G and make sense. Now, do I think Jimmy G is moves the needle for the Colts? Absolutely not. You are not going to beat the Chiefs, Bills, Chargers, Broncos, Bills,
Bengals, Ravens,
Patriots, Ravens with a guy like Jimmy G. I don't care how good your roster is. So
Titans in their own division.
Well, I think they could beat the Titans, but at the same time, I listen. I know that Carson Wentz was a little erratic at times, and Jimmy G gives you that steady hand. I get all that, but he's going to have to play above and beyond and outplay guys like you're not going to block a punt for a touchdown in a 0 temperature game to win a fucking game against the Packers every time. So that's not going to happen. So good luck with that. But I think I want to see him go. Just trade him. All right, last team. Let's talk Seattle Seahawks. Russ is gone. Drew Lock's in. Noah Fant's in. All that stuff. What's the post Russell Wilson and Bobby Wagner Seahawks look like, Sky? Talk a little bit about their free agents and what they've done so far.
It's either not drafting DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett at all, or it's getting Deshaun Watson and having both those guys as wide receiver ones. This is going to be really tough, man. I mentioned earlier on the last show that I think maybe even Marcus Mariota could end up being on one of those on maybe the Seahawks. I think that's a good landing spot for him. But look, man, your boy Rashad Penny and Gerald Everett, both guys that you've been super high on for the last couple seasons, both have battled injuries, both have had limited work, but when effective and when utilized, have absolutely jumped off the screen. Rashad Penny, top 5 running back in the back half of last season, and Gerald Everett before injury, dominant with the Rams and didn't get much work there with the Seahawks last year. So Rashad Penny, I see coming back to the Seahawks. It makes no sense to me that Pete Carroll would move on, even if Chris Carson's ready to go. Coming off a major neck injury is a problem, aging a little bit. They trust him. He's reliable. If he's healthy, they'll have both of those running backs, the Chris Carson and Rashad Penny, which are going to be a nightmare for fantasy, but that makes sense for the Seahawks. Gerald Everett, got to go. No offense there. Now, your boy Will Dissly got re-signed, which, just makes no sense. But Gerald Everett moving on makes sense to me. Everybody needs a pass-catching tight end. Like the Panthers don't use one, but they could definitely use a pass-catching tight end. If Rob Gronkowski doesn't come back with the Bucs, which I think he will, if he doesn't, then the Bucs make sense. The Colts need somebody now that Mo Alley Cox is probably leaving. Jack Doyle retired. So there's a lot of teams that could use a talent like Gerald Everett. So I'm going to kind of just put him out in the ether. The Packers might even bring somebody in there as well. He's a good athletic type. So Gerald Everett on the move, Rashad Penny coming back to Seattle.
Well, Cox re-signed with the Colts, so that's it. Gigantor's back, baby. All good. No, and listen, when it comes to Seattle, I want to say this. I'm going to say something that was already said in this podcast, and that's BS. I was robbed and stolen, and that's Sky Gawasko. I'm calling him out right now because I was the first one behind the scenes to say this. My pick for Seattle is Marcus Mariota. For everything, basically, Sky said earlier today. But here's another thing, too. I love all the factors about the West Coast, being up from Oregon, playing there, Pacific, West Coast, up north, whatever. I love all that stuff. But another thing I like about this, so Matt LaFleur was his OC in 2018. Arthur Smith took over that scheme in 2019. He has familiarity because Shane Waldron, of course, comes from the Rams. So there is familiarity with that type of system. So it won't be a completely new terminology, new scheme in the sense for Marcus Mariota. On top of all this, we don't really know. I think when it comes to the NFC, there's more need for high-level quarterback play. I totally get that. But you might be able to get away with defense, which the Titans used to do, defense and running the football. That's what the Titans were bread and butter, and they would use play action and movement with Marcus Mariota. That's what I think he's best suited for. If they take advantage of that, use him with his legs, I think that would be good. But I like Marcus Mariota going to Seattle, being in the Pacific Northwest, playing in that division. I think that would be a good fit if they fail to get Deshaun Watson, like you said earlier. But here's a quick question. Sky, I'm going to ask you one question, and you can close us out. If Mariota's the quarterback, what's your thoughts on DK and Tyler Lockett?
DK is going to be a back-end wide receiver 1 for me just because of the upside, probably like 12, 13. And Lockett is going to be a back-end wide receiver 2. I love Marcus. I loved him in college, but he just he's not a big play quarterback. Like, he's not going to be bombing all over. And we know Pete Carroll didn't let Russell Wilson do it, who's borderline a future Hall of Famer. So I'm worried about it. Although I will say this. We've seen mediocre rushing quarterbacks in the NFL over the last 10 years, 15 years, where it's broken fantasy football. Mediocre rushing quarterbacks have been quarterback 11 on the season because they run for 500 yards and 6 rushing touchdowns. Kirk Cousins, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Ryan Tannehill, those kind of guys you don't think of as rushing quarterbacks. Marcus can do that absolutely, and then some. He's an incredible runner, and he can throw the ball. With those 2 weapons, if Pete lets him go, he will be fine, but I'm worried about it. And this division is still unbelievable, man. All 3 defenses are fantastic.
Why, if you're Deshaun Watson, why would you want to go to Seattle after how everything went with Russ? Like, I don't know why he would pick them, unless they're offering the most crazy trade package. But he has a no trade clause. Why would you want to be under an OC like that and a coaching staff like that if Russ just left?
I got to be honest, man. And we'll wrap this up. We're going to come back, folks, tomorrow and the rest of this week, and we're going to break down the free agency moves. And, of course, when Watson lands, we're going to be talking about it relentlessly. I'll end with this, Bob. Of the teams that still need a quarterback, unless some crazy trade that nobody sees coming is going to happen, okay? Like an established quarterback moves from one team to another to make room for Watson that nobody sees coming and blindsides us. Other than that, the teams like the Panthers, Saints, the Colts, the Seahawks, the teams that we think need quarterbacks right now, none of them make sense for Deshaun Watson. The only one that does is the Colts, and he's not going to get traded there because they're in the same division. So for me, man, it's kind of a crapshoot, and we'll see what happens. But that's all we got for the NFC West, for the free agency wish list. That wraps up our mini series. We've done every division. We've covered every player, fantasy relevant at least, and some bonus. Heading out into free agency, we've given a lot of predictions. We've echoed a couple of the landing spots, and we have more to go. Come back with us tomorrow night. Come back with us on Thursday. We'll be back with you with some more free agency recap. This episode and all episodes have been brought to you by the Believe Networks and BetOnline AG. Make sure to smash that button. Leave a comment below your favorite free agency landing spot or trade. And make sure to subscribe right here to the Fantasy Focused YouTube channel on Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Also follow our podcast, the Candlestick Kids Fantasy Football Podcast. For Bob, I'm Sky. We'll catch you tomorrow.